Chapter 14, Part 2. Tobias followed the river hammocks and he came to Lake Kissimmee. There he skirted the east shore and then headed through a marsh area, soon coming to two more lakes. Late in the afternoon, he met a family traveling south by ox cart, and they told him it was just a few more miles into the village. He decided to make camp for the night and continue at daybreak. The next morning, he ate a sparse breakfast of smoked beef and biscuits, saving most of his food for the drovers on the return trip. Then, after a short ride, he approached Kissimmee along a dirt road deeply embedded by cows' hooves. Main Street extended for 2 blocks and was lined with unpainted clapboard buildings containing 2 general stores, a small cafe, a blacksmith shop, and 3 saloons. Saloons are like a bar or a pub. Wooden benches bordered the sidewalk in front of each store, and vacant lots separated the buildings, and they were overgrown with weeds. Tobias first rode all the way through town and into the residential section containing a half-dozen frame houses with small front porches and drawn window shades. A dog ran from one yard and barked as he passed, and in another chickens pecked at the bare ground. This was the most houses that Tobias had seen in years, and he observed everything carefully, the details of each, comparing them with his own homemade cabin. When he came back into the business section, loud curses were coming from one of the saloons. He watched curiously as a lone rider rode up to a window, cut into the side of the building, was handed filled a glass, and exchanged it for a coin. He drank it in one gulp and then sauntered off, never dismounting his horse. Just then a man crashed through the swinging doors and landed flat on his back in the street. He got up painfully, brushed the dirt from his pants, and then walked to one of the stores and sat on a bench. Tobias rode by slowly, studying the man out of the corner of his eye. He was about 30. He was 6 feet tall and thin as a cypress pole, and he had a big, bushy black beard. On the top of his head was a huge black felt hat covered in dust. He stared dejectedly at the ground and paid no heed as the horse passed. At the next store, Tobias dismounted, tied his horse to a rail, and walked back to the man. He hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to make an approach, and then he said, "You looking for work?" The man glanced up at him. "Doing what?" "Brush popping." What's that?" "Working cows, herding." "What does it pay?" 50 cents a day plus keep, but I can't pay you until I sell the cows. You got a horse? Well, I got a piece of one. I rode him in the Army. Which Army? Reb? Do I smell like a Federal? No, more like a skunk. When's the last time you went down to the creek and had a bath? I don't rightly remember, said the man. Must have been some time back in 1965. That's like 3 years ago. Tobias shifted his feet and said, "Well, you want the job or not? I got a herd, I got to move to Punta Rasa, and I ain't got time to stand here jawing with you." "Well, one thing for sure, I ain't had a dollar on me in over 3 years, and I've eaten so many possums I feel like I could hang my tail from a tree limb. When do I start? I'm riding out of here just as soon as I can. My name's Tobias McIvy. What's your name?" "Frog." "Frog? Frog what?" "Just Frog. That's all the name I need. I got a buddy down the street. Can he come too?" "Yep, I need 2 drovers. What's his name?" "Bonzo." "Lordy me," Tobias said, shaking his head. "Frog and Bonzo. This is going to be some cattle crew. Well, go tell them we're leaving right here in a half hour. Both of you better be on time." "Well, could I have 50 cents in advance?" Frog asked. "What for?" "I've done been throwed out of every saloon betwixt here and Tallahassee, and I just want to have time to have one drink and pay cash for it. That way I won't end up flat on my back in the street." "No," Tobias said harshly. "I ain't paying for my hard-earned money to buy you whiskey. Now you go and fetch your buddy back there." "It was just a thought," Frog said, turning and walking away. Tobias went into the store and said to the clerk, "You got cheese?" "How much you want?" 2 1-pound blocks, and please wrap them separate." The clerk cut 2 chunks from a hoop, wrapped them, and handed them to Tobias. "Now what else?" "Can you make me a sign?" "What kind of sign you want?" "A small one, about 3 feet long." "Sure, we got stencils." "Well, how long it'll take you and how much is it going to cost me?" "It takes about 75 cents counting the board. Won't take me but a couple minutes, but you're going to have to be careful until the paint dries. What do you want it to say?" "McIvy Cattle Company." "How do you spell that name?" "MAC capital IVEY. Clerk said, "Well, why don't you just write it down for me on a piece of paper and then I'll just copy it." "If I could write it down, don't you think I'd make the sign myself?" Tobias said impatiently. "I can count cows and money, but I ain't no good at writing. And besides, that's what I'm paying you for." "All right, it won't take but a minute." As the clerk went to the back of the store, Tobias said, "Punch 2 holes in the top of the board so I could tie it to the side of my wagon." While waiting, he walked around the store looking at the sparsely stocked shelves, thinking that goods here were not much more plentiful than at Fort Caprone, but the emphasis here seemed to be on things needed by cattlemen. On one counter, he found a basket of pink ribbons, and when the clerk came back, he said, "How much are these?" 5 cents. 5 cents each. Purty, aren't they? We got them in about a month ago. We don't have much call for ribbons, mostly men in these parts. I'll take one. You got a Dutch oven? That I do not have. How much do I owe you?" Altogether, it comes to $1.25. Tobias paid the bill, picked up the sign carefully so he wouldn't smear it. He said, "Much obliged," and started out. The clerk called after him, "Don't touch that paint for an hour. It ought to be dry by then." Frog and Bonzo were standing in the street holding their horses when Tobias came from the store. He did a double take when he saw Bonzo. He said, "You two look like twin brothers. You must be cut from the same mold." "We ain't," Frog said. "It just appears that way. I ain't no kin to this varmint." Tobias scratched his head. "I thought I looked like a cattail stock, but the two of you are skinnier than I am. You look like you need worming. When's the last time you ate?" "Can't say for sure," Frog said, "but right now I could eat a cut of a saddle." "Well, here, take this," Tobias said, handing each of them a package of cheese. "I bought it for you." He watched as they opened the cheese and ate eagerly, and then he said, "My wife is a good cook. Her name's Emma. She can make a polecat taste like ham. She'll put some meat on your bones. I got smoked beef and biscuits in the saddlebag, and we'll have that for supper." "How long gonna take to go where we're getting?" Bonzo said, stuffing his mouth. "Well, we'll be there in the morning. Best we take it easy on the way. Them horses look like they're about to faint dead away if you put 'em in a trot. The bones stick out worse than on y'all two. What they need is some good prairie grass. Let's mount up and go soon as I finish this sign to my saddle. You can eat on the way." Tobias secured the board, and they mounted and rode down the street. He wondered what Emma, Zek, and Skillet were going to think when they saw Frog and Bonzo come riding out of the woods. He felt sure that Nip and Tuck would put 'em up a tree. Frog said, "Mr. McIvy, don't you worry none about these horses. They old and skinny, but they tough, and me and Bonzo might look like rotten bean poles, but we're like these old nags. We knows how to hang in there. And we sure thank you for the cheese. You're the first one who just up and gave us something beside a hard time." "I just hope you enjoyed it," Tobias said. "It might stop up your innards, but it'll fix your belly for a while. We got some riding to do before dark and the next meal." As Tobias and the two men rode into the clearing, Emma and Zek came out of the house. Tobias stopped his horse and said uncertainly, "Emma, this here's Frog and Bonzo, our two new drovers." "Howdy, ma'am," they said in unison, removing their hats. "Well, this is my son, Zek." "Howdy, Zek. Pleased to meet you." They all dismounted as Emma and Zek continued to stare at the gaunt strangers. Tobias watched their reactions closely. Zek said, "What kind of horses is them?" "Just horses," Frog responded. "They's worse than the one Papa bought at Fort Caprone. Looks like they need some grass." Emma said, "Are y'all men hungry? I fixed a big pot of stew in case Tobias brought somebody back with him." "Oh, they're always hungry," Tobias said. "Last night they ate everything but my saddlebag. From now on you best make stew in a wash tub instead of a cooking pot. Hey, where's Skillet?" "He's in his cabin. He's putting in some shelves. I'll go get him." Before Zek could move, Skillet came from the cabin, and Frog took one look at him and said, "Where'd you get him? That's the biggest man I ever seen." "His name's Skillet," Tobias said, "and he's my right-hand man. You and Bonzo can bunk in with him tonight." "Pleased to meet you, Skillet," Frog said pleasantly, remembering what Emma said about stew. "I'm Frog, and this here's Bonzo." Just then Nip and Tuck came running from the woods, yapping loudly. They bounded across the clearing and came straight after the two men. Frog and Bonzo reached Skillet's cabin just ahead of the dogs and scrambled to the roof. The dogs then ran around and around the cabin trying to climb up the walls. "I knew it," Tobias shouted. "I just knew they were going to do it. Call 'em off, Zek." Zek whistled and the dogs came to him. Frog and Bonzo peeked over the edge of the roof and Frog said, "Where'd you get them wolves?" "They ain't wolves," Zek said. "They's dogs, and their names are Nip and Tuck, and they ain't gonna hurt you. They just don't know who you are." "You better make an introduction before I come off of here," Frog said. "They done scared the living daylights out of me." Skillet was watching the whole thing, grinning from ear to ear. "Well, they won't do it again. As soon as they know you're a part of the crew, they'll start to like you." Frog and Bonzo climbed down off the roof reluctantly, and then they all went into the house and they took 10 plates from the shelf. Just before they went to bed that night, Tobias and Emma sat at the table alone talking. Emma said, "Where'd you ever find those two, Tobias?" "On the street, in Kissimmee. But don't let their looks fool you. They're tough. I done seen it. They'll be a big help to us." "Well, I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about supplies. I never seen men eat like them. They keep it up. We'll have to kill and cook every cow before we even get to Punta Rasa." Tobias smiled. It's just that they're empty right now, and they've been that way a long time. They're bound to fill up soon. I hope so. I don't know how I could keep a cook fire going all day turning during the drive. Tobias then took the ribbon that he had bought her from his pocket and he held it behind him. I bought a little something for you in Kissimmee. It ain't much, but I thought you would like it. And when he handed it to her, she said, "Oh, it's so pretty, Tobias, real pretty. I thank you, but I'm not going to wear it myself. I'll put it away. Pink is for a baby girl. I'll save it." Tobias felt his face flush. He reached out and touched her and said, "You'll use it someday, Emma. Now that I got some help, things are going to change for us." All right, that's the end of chapter 14. Have an awesome day.